Welcome back to the Tuxes Tomahawks podcast. I'm Adam Dorito, and today I have the pleasure to interview the most interesting man in the world, Miles Spencer. And then finally we got to connect. We had to move some things around because he's a really busy guy, and he's doing all these amazing things. So Miles, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, real pleasure to be here, Adam. Thank you for having me.
So Miles, tell me your background. You have a fascinating story from all the things that you've done and the bio that people got to read. So where did you come from? Where did you grow up? And how did you get involved in some of the things that you are doing today?
Well, I think the right way to frame my story is I'm a curious kid from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I used to drive my parents nuts. Who, what, why, where, when, everything. Who, what, why, where, when, to the point where they just kind of threw up their hands and said, like, talk to your grandparents. So I went through life that way, and that served me very well in technology. That served me very well in building my businesses. And it really informed my adventures and informed pretty much everything I did. So in the end, it's the curiosity that's the governing force in my life. And I hope to teach that to my kids as well. So that's what led to being a tech entrepreneur. That's what led to being an investor. That's what led to taking wild trips with my buddy Wells around the world and getting a little bit of understanding that we could share back with folks in the West, as they say.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you're one of the few people that I know that has actually traveled out around the world and has actually done things. And I think it's such a valuable experience because when you talk to a lot of Americans, whether they're involved in business or they join the military or the Peace Corps, or they're just your random neighbor complaining about whatever politician they want to complain about today, they have such a hard understanding of the actual context of how the rest of the world works. And you're one of the few people that I know now that understands those concepts. This is not how these other countries work, and this is not how these people think, and you can't always tell them well, this is how it is because I'm an American, because that's not exactly how it works, right?
Well, point of a spear sure helps, right? There's this great line from Eddie Izzard, the comedian, English actually, but he's born in the Middle East. And he would say, do you have a flag? And I'm like, no, we've been here for 500 years. We don't need a flag. So I go, no flag, no country. I proclaim, this is Britain's soil now, right? And well, what makes that work is the point of a spear. And I think that a lot of the issues that we have around the world today were created 100 years ago by middle-aged white men that look surprisingly like me, sitting around in clubs in Paris and London saying, we need this. Let's draw the line there, and you'll get that, and you get this, right? So it's about natural resources, about strategic importance
Right.
of geolocation. And that's the way they rolled, right? Seemed like a good idea at the time. They were brilliant men for their times, but 100 years later, damn, are we feeling it?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny because we're still in the same debacle right now. And I think you as a tech guy, you kind of understand this, right? So you have China and you have Russia doing their spheres of influence now and expanding their reach, especially in the Middle East. I spent some time in the Middle East, so did you guys. And you can see how wild the Middle East is when you actually get outside the domesticated cities. Like, you go to Dubai or you go to Kuwait City or you go to like Riyadh and it's like, oh yeah, this is like this nice Western area. Then you go like 5 miles outside that place and you're like, well, so this is not. This is still like 300-400 years old, and how they do things out here, right?
Yeah.
And
Or
they are
3,000.
yeah, or yeah, I mean, especially when you go up to Jordan, right? I mean, you go up to Jordan and it's a completely different environment. It's literally that's where they film The Martian. That's out in the
Yeah.
gullies out there, right? So people have a hard time understanding that like military influence or how these guys did things 100 years ago. It's still how things are done today. It's how most political governments work. It's just that it's not necessarily about the freedom and the justice of these people. No, it's never about that. It's about the acquisition of resources and enhancing your own country by acquiring those resources. And at the time, when they discovered oil in the Middle East and then Halliburton started doing fracking out there, yeah, hey, this is a gold mine. And now, I mean, most of those countries out there, as if you watch like Indiana Jones, which, apparently you and Wells are basically like, the two Indiana Jones guys that I know, right? They had a big giant fishing and trading industry in Kuwait City. Like that's what they did. They dove for mussels and they got pearls and they made Arabian carpets and they walked around with their camels and like that's kind of how they were. They were a nomadic existence, and then they discovered oil, and then like everything changed, And now and then everyone's like, oh wait, you guys have something that we need, so we need to come get it, And then it just changed the entire demographics of that area. Same thing. You go to Ukraine. What are they trying to negotiate peace deals on? Oh, it's not about the truth and justice and peace of the people. It's hey, you guys have a lot of rare earth minerals. We need to build like computer chips and stuff. So if you guys do that, we'll like guarantee you peace and security. So like. Same story, 100 years later, different time frame, right? And I think you've had those experiences where you've been able to travel and integrate with these cultures and understand where these people are coming from. I've had some of those experiences too, and I'd love to hear your background on what your experience was like during your time overseas with these people.
Well, as the story goes, it was after 9/11. I was a curious kid, right? Who, what, why, where, when. And I wasn't really getting what I considered to be a decent explanation, right? You get shock and awe, you got weapons of mass destruction. We're all hanging out at the UN, and Mr. Powell has got some interesting slides, and like I don't know. And I'm reading everything I can on it. And the one book that really made a difference for me is Seven Pillars of Wisdom by T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, as most people know from the movie. And Wells has come through town from Washington, D.C. I say, hey, Wells, what are you reading? He says, Seven Pillars of Wisdom. I'm like, holy shit, I just finished that. What do you think? It's the one man from the West in the last 100 years that's understood the Bedouin mentality, which you were just referring to.
Yeah.
Bedouins is like the tribesmen of the area. And was able to not only understand that, but then bring it back to the West and explain it in a way in which the West had some inkling of what was going on. Now, nobody at the Paris Peace Conference and after the end of the First World War took his advice.
No,
but they should have.
Should have.
As a matter of fact, he and Gertrude Bell drew a map of where the lines ought to be based on the tribes and the languages, and never mind. It's like, look, it's about the oil, and Churchill had converted the British Army from coal to oil, and that's why they're like, look, they're looking at Persia. It's like they're just cutting those deals in Persia. Mm-hmm. Interesting. You mentioned the pearl divers in Dubai, and it was water that they were looking for in Saudi Arabia. I mean, this was not Saudi Arabia at the time,
right?
But it was Philby who basically was looking for water. Is about to get fired. He kept coming up with this like black stuff.
Guys can't drink this.
It's like, and he very much did not like the British, even though he was British. And so he cut the deal with SoCal, and boom, there's Aramco. Definitely one more story on this point is at the end of the Second World War, FDR had realized that the U.S. could never afford to run out of oil, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it took a boat to the Red Sea, and Saud came out to meet him, and he said, look, cut your deal. You will never be overthrown from inside or from outside of your kingdom. and we will never run out of oil. Now, that's a handshake, but guess what? That handshake's lasted pretty well in the last 80 years. And as a matter of fact, what you're looking at yesterday,
I was gonna say,
like here we are again, man.
yeah.
It's the new access of power.
Well, the interesting dynamic about this is I've seen it shift so drastically. So, I've served under Bush, I've served under Obama, then Trump 1, then Biden, then Trump 2. And the interesting thing, when I was over there, I was under the Biden administration. The Middle East lost complete respect for us, 100%. They didn't care about what we were doing. They didn't care how many weapons we were selling them, because the way these people operate too, and I think you would agree, is that they respect the image of power. They respect the prominence and the respect of power. When Biden was in office, and I can say this now because he's not in anymore, so who cares? Even though I still wear the uniform, so whatever, is they completely took this guy as a joke. And they didn't want to work with anyone in the U.S. military when I was over there. Like, they would purposely, even like our allies, even the Kuwaitis and stuff, like they would like purposely try to sabotage our operations all the time, as American service members, because they're like, well, the Chinese businessman came in, and so did the Russian businessmen, and they actually promised to build us roads, and they're actually doing it. And like the Chinese bought out some of the refineries, and they're revamping everything, and it's making us more money. And as a result, more of our people have jobs. And it's really great to sell us an American Abrams or an Apache helicopter, but it just sits in dry routes in the desert because our guys don't use it anyway. So we'll let the Americans do our military training with our weak military anyway, but they respect the business and the power when it comes in. And when China and Russia were doing that, when I was over there in the early 2020s, they really were completely switching alliances. But what happened the other day completely flipped that narrative, and it's a good thing. I know I don't care about the whole I hate Trump thing. I really don't care, because MBS, the Qatari government, they sat there and went, this man shows himself as a king of America, because that's how they view everything over there in royalty versions, right? He came down in the purple tie. He came down with the purple carpet, which, if you guys know about colors over there, that's a big respect thing. Huge respect thing, right? He showed up with his entire Arabian horse, like, color guard. Like, that's never happened to any American president in history. That's a big deal. And for people who don't understand Middle Eastern country, like, what they did to Trump when he landed, I'm like, he just solidified a deal for another 100 years. I don't think people understand that. Like, they gave him because they have a spare one sitting in the back. Here's a 747. You know what I mean? Don't care. Like, we got 20 of them in the back, and we're going to buy another 160 of them from Boeing. And I think people don't understand, how could Trump accept this jet? Well, one, you can go into the whole, like, well, it's actually cheaper for us to do that because Boeing can't figure their stuff out with the whole Air Force One program here anyway. But two, you never, ever, ever tell a Middle Eastern royal family no to a gift. You don't do that. If you do that, it doesn't work out well for you, right? So Trump accepting the gift is a sign of respect from that side. And the fact that he anchored in over $2 trillion worth of deals in like 4 days. Yeah, this guy committed more Middle Eastern foreign policy business deals in like the 96 hours than any American president has done in 30 years, because of he understands the culture. And whoever was advising him on that deserves a promotion and a raise for sure, because, maybe he read the T.D. Lawrence book, right? Like, because you have to understand how that culture works. That's how they are. They're all about the pomp and circumstance. They're all about that image. But going back to what you said about FDR, your country will never get overthrown and invaded as long as you keep supplying us with, the oil. And they're happy to do it because they need the food. They need the electricity access. They need all those things because
they need everything else.
Because you can't eat money, right? Like they have all the money in the world, but you can't eat it. You can burn it and keep yourself warm at night in the desert out there. But at the end of the day, they need those secure economic trade deals that are going to secure food, water, and electricity for their population, right? And if Trump's going to come in and guarantee it over China and Russia, the guy's extremely intelligent for doing that, because now he's solidified that deal and massive prosperity, because they'll just give money away. They don't care. Like, literally they did, like giving away a 747, whatever,
Well said. I love that phrase. You can't eat money. Exactly.
Yeah, you can't eat money. And also, like I said, there's no water out there, so they need more desalination plants. They need all these things. Like I said, and for people like you who have traveled to the Middle East and have seen these things, like, you get it. But people who sit here on the sidelines of the United States in their 50-mile circle around their little neighborhoods, and they just like, oh, I can't believe all this stuff is going on. It's like, well, maybe you should go to like, another country or stop reading like the social media.
It's right. It's hard to understand. And that was one of the reasons that Wells and I, look, when we finished these books, and we were still curious, right? Who,
Hmm.
what, why, where, when, still going to want to figure this out. And we kind of shrugged our shoulders and said, well, let's go.
Right.
And we were fortunate enough. I had hosted a television show years ago and I had a book out at the time. Wildly, at the same time, we're flying into Amman, Jordan.
Hmm.
We get an invitation to come speak about, well, I did, I was the author of the book, to speak about entrepreneurship in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, to YPO, Young Presidents Organization. Like, wow, great timing. But I had Wells with me. Like, pomp and circumstance. Is it all right if I bring my bodyguard? It's like, yeah, sure.
They love that
so,
stuff.
So Wells comes with me. And I guess I did okay in the presentation because they said, wow, great presentation. Now, what else can we do for you? Typical Saudi, right? You're inside the tent.
Right.
And we said, well, actually, we'd like to trek 1,100 miles from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia to Damascus, Syria, retracing the steps of T.E. Lawrence and Seven Pillars of Wisdom. And they go like, cool. What do you need? And we were in. So, we got the support of very higher up, still a very higher up in Saudi royalty. Wrote us a little letter, got us anything we wanted within Saudi, and it still worked in Jordan, and it still worked in Syria. By the way, it was impressive, and it was a nice thing.
I think people don't understand that about Jordan and Syria is that they're actually still how do I explain this? I forget the exact terminology. They're still basically a subjugate kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They're just allowed to operate because the Saudis said so, and they get like Jordan, like the king of Jordan is actually like a Saudi.
Yeah, well,
right?
It was not. And I hate to correct you on your own podcast.
No, correct me because I thought it was something like that.
Right, you're so close. You just need to update the term. So he's a Hashemite.
Hashemite,
the Hashemites, right. The Faisal Husseins, they ruled the Hejaz, which is the western side of what we now know as Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia means the Arabia that the Saud family owns, right? So that didn't happen until the 20s and 30s. But back in the teens when the war was beginning, that was all owned and protected by, you don't own it because it's Mecca and Medina are holy sites, right? So they're the caretakers of the holy sites. But guess what? If you're the caretaker and the gatekeeper of the two most holy sites in Islam, you pretty much own the joint. So they're Hashemites, and they basically, they're the ones that led and teamed with the British Army in the Arab Revolt, right? And the deal was, hey, if you get to Damascus first and distract the Turks along the way, we'll have a much easier path along the shore, and you can have a pan-Arab kingdom with the capital being in Damascus. Great deal. Guess what? Lawrence helped Faisal get it done. So the Hashemites are sitting there for a moment thinking that they complied with the deal. Let's go. And the British at the time, is a general by the name of Allenby, who was on site. He basically said, like, it's political stuff. I'm here to stabilize. And, well, the British had promised it to the French in an agreement called Sykes-Picot. So basically, they double-dealed them. And that set up a wee little bit of animosity between the parties. And so the French are kind of like, hey, we've been here since the Crusades. So we lost a couple million people in the trenches of the Western Front. So we should have the Levant, which is Syria and Lebanon, right?
Yep.
And the Hashemites, the Husseins, are like, what about our deal? Like, sorry, man. Now, they made Faisal king of Syria. I think that lasted 6 weeks. And then this even gets better. So we did give him this deal. We kicked him out of Syria on behalf of the French. We'll make him king of Iraq.
King of Iraq.
Which they renamed it Mesopotamia. They made it Iraq, much easier to say for the Westerners. And, that lasted a little while. But they're Hashemites. The last Hashemite is King Hussein of Jordan. And, here, the irony to me is they were convinced and they helped the British overrun the Ottoman Empire, right?
Yeah.
They vacated their homeland, which they had run for 600 years. And Saud came from the east and eventually consolidated all the tribes and wiped them out. So Saudi Arabia has been is basically displaced the Husseins. But what can you do, man? That's how they roll on the peninsula. So
It really is. And actually one of the most fascinating things is I was out there with a civil affairs intelligence team out in Amman doing some work in Jordan for intelligence out there on the border of Syria. I thought one of the most interesting things I heard when I was out there. So they have like a mining industry for like, some salts and some other things, but like that's really their only industry. They don't have anything else. And I asked, well, you guys are connected to the same peninsula as Saudi. Why don't you drill for oil? Like you guys have plenty of it up here. They're not allowed to. Saudi Arabia does not allow Jordan to drill for its oil. Like pretty much it's like money, please. They have to ask daddy from down south if they want anything. And I just find that relationship between Jordan and Saudi Arabia very, very interesting. It's like they're not allowed to do these things and they're supposed to keep the West Bank and the Palestinian corridor, right there. They're supposed to keep it under control in the Jordan Valley. And then we went out to the Jordan Valley. That was a wild experience. I'm sure you spent some time out there too. So I was out there when that reporter got shot.
Yeah.
That was a crazy experience because when you really see what's going on the Jordan River between Israel and Jordan, it opens up your eyes because you're like, oh, wait a minute. This isn't what anyone says it is on the news. You're like, there's a few other contingent things going on here that they don't like to talk about. Like when I was down there, the Israelis put like 20 landmines on the shore, right? And everyone who's been to the Jordan River, it's really like 20 feet wide. Like there's nothing left of it, right?
It's nothing.
Right. Yeah. And the Israelis had poisoned the water upstream so that the Palestinian refugees that are working in the West Bank and the plantations there for the bananas and the coffee and everything else, they were getting poisoned. So the kids had to go down there and they were like picking up water to go throw through their own filters. And the little Bedouin tribe, things that are right there, right where the baptism site for Christ is, right? So like 5 miles right to the west of that. Yep. And then the kids stepped on the landmines and all got blown up when they were just trying to collect water, right? So then
didn't make the news.
No, of course that didn't make the news. And then I don't know, their parents got kind of mad that you killed a bunch of their kids. So then they just put on a bunch of ski masks and start launching rockets 20 feet across the river into the other side because you just killed their kids. And then they go, oh no, the ISIS terrorists are attacking us. Then they send in 4 F-16s and level an entire like tent city. And I'm just like, okay. So what they did is they left out the fact that you guys killed all their kids when they were just trying to collect water. You left that part out, and then you wiped out like a couple hundred of them. I can't imagine why they're so mad at you today when they were just trying to do banana farming.
Yeah, well, we have not to give it all away, but we have in the back of our book, we have some little notes from a grandmother, and one of those 5 items is that retribution never ends the game.
No, especially out there. Right. Definitely not. They'll go tit for tat all day. All day. They don't care because for them, and I think you'll agree, like the way those tribal systems work is that's all they got left. You know what I mean? Like this is all they have left to their name. Literally what they're carrying on their backs. So if they have to move, they'll move. And I feel bad for a lot of these people. And yeah, there are bad people out there. There are terrorists, right? Like I dealt with some of those people, but the majority of those people in those areas are just trying to survive every day. They just want to eat. They want to hang out in their tents. They want to smoke some hookah. They want to just trade with their neighbors, and they want to move on to the next thing. And they get caught in this political chaos with the people who just don't live there, right? A lot of this political turmoil that goes on over there and all these horrible things that we see all over the news. And, like we saw Gaza getting built up before we even left, before the October 7th thing happened. But I'm like, you're leaving out a lot of things that led up to this. Like they just like, oh no, the terrorists abducted like, X amount of Israelis. I sat there and just went, you left out the entire part building up to that.
Yeah,
You know, but
well, it's true. It's true, but it's a
yeah,
moment in time, right?
yeah,
And this has been going on for 1,000 years, ten
thousands of
thousand,
years. Americans can't even have that concept. Like we just turned 250 this year.
right?
It's like, congratulations, America. You made it like nothing in a span of time compared to most of these countries and their deep rooted histories. And if our country survives that long, I'm sure we'll have our disparities with those too. So how did you start off with this whole tech company as well? Like and this TV show before you even started doing all these things? Like your background is fascinating to young Americans who are looking to make a difference in the world today. And I wanted that background too before we got too deep into something.
Yeah, again, curious guy from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I left college. My father had become ill with a pretty rare disease. He survived, got 30 more years out of it, but I spent time in his business. And he was a life insurance salesman. So he would put together deals so that he could sell the key man insurance. And I go, Dad, you know, why don't you just do the deals? You're like, well, why don't you do them? Like, okay. And I was 19 years old. I bought my first company. So I, I guess my math skills are okay. My finance skills are okay. I was able to piece some basics together to allow me to buy my first company, eventually sell it, buy my second. I got into investment banking before now we're talking like I've seen 3 or 4 crashes, right? So that's how far back I go. I was fortunate enough to be around Dirty.com. That led to the TV show. Interesting story. My partners, we had a very small fund Dirty.com, and everybody else had like 100 million bucks, and we have 4. And so we got to do smaller deals, but how are we going to get them? And I had gone to as an exchange student, I'd gone to France, and I watched a show called The Entrepreneurs by Bernard Tapie. Great story about him. He ended up, he's a wonderful French scoundrel. We'll just put that in the show notes later. Bernard Tapie, he's in the Hall of Fame of French scoundrels. But he had this TV show, and I mentioned this to my partner. So yeah, these guys would come on, they pitch your ideas, and they give them thumbs up or thumbs down. Sometime to write a check. So why don't we do that? It's like, yeah, why don't we? Well, interestingly enough, remember Wayne's World and Wayne
Yeah,
and
of course
Garth?
it did.
Like they found out that there was like you could go to cable access and pay $500 and have a show. So I looked up my cable access company. We paid $500. We had a show. I got into the tape of the show into the hands of an exec at Warner Brothers. He had me out. He said, like, this is how to build this. So in 6 months, we were on 230 stations in the US, 13 countries overseas. And basically we had a show where all the entrepreneurs wanted to be on because they could pitch their ideas, right? Sounds familiar? It became Dragon's Den. Dragon's Den became Shark Tank, right? So that's worth like 1 cup of coffee at my local Starbucks today. But look, you can tell by the length of my answers, right? I was on camera and hosting the show together with a lawyer. So I loved everything. Of course, the lawyer hated everything. And it was a great dynamic. We had that show for 150 episodes, just a little bit. Airtime was like about 12 years. And syndicated, we're reaching an audience of 1.2 million, 1.3 million every week. So it was it was legit back then. What we had done it for was to see the deal flow. And so the best of the companies didn't even get on the show. We just did the deal. One of those was register.com. Register.com ended up breaking the domain name registration. When I got an idea for a company, I'm going to go, register Tuxes and Tomahawks.com.
Right.
Yeah. That used to be just one company. That's called Network Solutions. You had to go through them. It's like, why is it only them? And so we actually, the founder of the company, Richard Foreman, wrote a note to Congress that controlled Icon, said why do they have a monopoly? Why indeed? So he testified in Congress. 30 days later, they issued a letter. Look it up. They said, this needs to be broken up. So multiple people need to issue TLDs or domain names. And the first one's going to be register. So Deutsche Bank thought that was worth a couple $2 billion in the IPO. So
yeah, it's not a bad gig there, Miles.
Big, look, my other partners did very, very well. I did just fine. and that was my .com story. That allowed me not just the resources, but also the connections to start investing in technology companies, and I became a founder of two and a half, three digital media. You remember that moment when Stephen Jobs said, like, it's a phone, it's a camera, it's a music, phone, camera, music device. And I go, like, you know what?
People are like,
BlackBerry's
no
dead.
way.
Yeah, BlackBerry's dead, right?
Yep.
So I never trade public equities. In that case, I shorted BlackBerry. Research in motion.
Nice.
And and I also created a mobile ad serving network that bought and sold these ads, because my theory was nobody's going to pay for these apps. People are going to just like ingest the advertising, and so basically I'm a dopamine salesman, right? And there's a mobile ad network called Argiva. There's a mobile ad serving technology called Motion Mobile. It's another technology management company called Operative. Each one of those ended up exiting for a couple $100 million. So once again, I did fine. My partners did very, very well. And that allowed me, 3 times exits, 1,100 employees. That allowed me to do other deals, but be more selective about it, but also pursue other things that I believed in. One of them is kids. I've had, now I have a 13-year-old and 11-year-old kid. And man, you think entrepreneurs are nuts. Have a couple of kids. Like, as I say, as a matter of fact, it says right there, results vary.
I have to give you a lot of credit to this, because you are describing what I complain about a lot, is like, masculinity and being a man and going out there and looking after these things. And I've known some business people over my life. I mean, even my family's involved in commercial real estate in Arizona, and it's just, they have such a different mentality, because sometimes you get wrapped up into the environment and you don't understand what's important, right? I mean, you were successful, you went in, you saw these businesses develop, you got in, you got out, you pulled out when you need to do, but at the end of the day, the most important thing in your life is being a dad. Right. And traveling around and seeing the world and seeing other cultures. Like, did you have to do these things? No. Could you sit around and be a caged American like most people think about and just stay in your little box of, whatever else you're doing? Yeah, you could, but you chose not to. You chose to do the hard thing. And I think one of the hardest things that I see a lot of people challenge themselves is being a father, and actually learning how to do those things. And I'm excited myself one day when I become a dad. I talk about it a lot, but it's just there's not a lot of Americans with that perspective anymore, and they take their business and their success, and then they keep going up this ladder, but they forget their roots of where they came from and what the basic necessities of like human existence is, right? Because if you don't have anything to hand anything off to what you've built upon, how can you continue to build? Your kids are gonna have to start all over again. I think you have exemplified success is great, but what really matters is being a father and being a dad and being a good husband.
Thanks for that. I was scared to, like, what are kids like? How am I going to do this? How much do I have to have before I can have kids? What's the right number, et cetera? I'm having this conversation with a buddy out kayaking on Long Island Sound, and he just laughed at me. His name is Scott. He goes, like, doesn't matter, right? Just start. And look, I had my first kid when I was 50, so it's important to have a little bit of stamina still left. A little bit of cartilage is helpful. I have less and less of that.
Lift weights and protein shakes, Miles.
That's right. That's right. Well, there's another secret. DNA. So
Yeah.
I was named after my great grandfather. Miles Sharpless Spencer. You don't get that name too much after the Civil War. And he was the 23rd of 24 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
You got good genetics in your blood.
Yeah, right. So that his father was 74 years old when he had him. Right?
Oh,
so
wow.
It's like, I'm starting at 50. I'll be fine. Right.
I'll be fine. It's good.
You're fine.
Twist the back a little bit, stretch it out.
I'm fine.
I can still touch my toes. I'm good.
That's basically it. Yeah. We still have a few, in my mind, there's still more adventures ahead of us. And Wells and I, of course, when we plan these, we have something more, right? It's not just let's climb Kilimanjaro, let's climb Everest and like personal best. Yeah, yeah, you might have me on this podcast because we climbed a peak, but like, so what? Like, what did you help anyone along the way? Did you share
Right.
any understanding? Did you bring anything back? Not to, I mean, not to criticize, but I guess I am. It just feels a little hollow to us.
Yeah.
And so when we create these adventures, we actually create them so that we can bring back understanding
Hmm.
and share that with people. And that's what we do with our books.
No, and I think that's such a valuable thing. That's actually why I want to stay connected with you guys throughout this because one, I'm going to strap you to a parachute that I'm going to pack and I'm going to throw you out of an airplane with me next year. I'm bringing Miles to D-Day next year after I get
I'm
back. So,
down. I'm down for
um,
it.
no, but I think that I would say that is one of the most important things you said during this podcast is that the whole point of travel and experiencing things is not for yourself, it's for other people, right? And it's to gain knowledge and understanding of the world around us because the world is a fascinating place. And if people just get to go out and see it and see what the world has to offer you, you'd be amazed at the perspectives and how things in your brain will change. Like you said, oh, when the shock and awe campaign started off in Iraq and all these other stuff and Colin Powell's with these pictures. And, when I was a young, 16, 17-year-old kid getting ready to sign up to join the military, I'm like, I can't wait to go kill all of these terrorists overseas. And then you get there and you're like, wait a minute. I don't think we should be doing this. Right. And then, I spent time in Nepal and I've spent time in India and I've spent time in Peru. And I see these very poor people. I mean, poverty on another level that Americans can't understand. They think our homeless people here are poor. I'm like, no, our homeless people are millionaires compared to these people overseas. And when you see what these people survive off of and what they do day to day, and that they are the happiest people I've ever met, and it's sit there and just go, what are we missing? We got our Mercedes and we have our houses and we have our money and we have as much food in the grocery store as we want. And Americans are some of the most miserable people I've ever had to work with. And then when you get to go out and see these things and they have 20 kids and they live off $1.50 a day. So you know what? It's possible. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. But I mean, like if you're not doing something difficult every day, then how are you possibly learning how to be a better human on a day-to-day basis? And I think your experiences in the tech industry and even just traveling around the Middle East and learning how the Bedouin tribes work and doing all the things you're doing now, even as a dad, I mean, like you're exemplifying what I beg and plead most Americans to go do is just go step outside your comfort zone and go do something that makes you uneasy. Because if you don't, how are you ever going to learn how to be a better human or be a better American if you want to stay inside the confines of your country's boundaries, right?
Amen to all that. Plus one.
Yeah. So I just what is some of the best advice you can give to people that are starting out in their younger business journeys? Because you got a lot of young Americans, especially a lot of young men, who are really struggling right now with: do I go to college? Do I spend all this money? Do I put myself into debt? I can't even get a girlfriend. I can't even start a family because, like you said, what number's the right number to have a family, right? I can't get a house. I can't do all these things, and Americans are so stressed out. But I think you can give people a unique perspective from your life experience about, what would you tell young men now who are really confused about what to do in this time in our country amidst all the political chaos and all the media chaos they're seeing? What advice would you give young men and women today, to start their life?
Wow. What an ask. I am flattered that I get to share my opinion on this. It's all based on the rearview mirror, right? Because I didn't figure any of this shit out along the way till now. And furthermore, the people I'm about to give this advice to don't listen anyways. So I would say number one
I make them do
is,
push-ups.
is consider listening, right? Number two is be curious. Be curious about something. Who, what, why, where, when. And it doesn't really matter what it is. Like make sourdough bread, paint watercolors, learn another language. Be curious. And that'll lead you to amazing places. And what it might lead you to is number three, and it's probably the biggest. Find something you love and figure out a way to keep in the game for the rest of your life. Right. And that definition of what you love can morph and change but it gives you this enthusiasm that, you never set an alarm. You just get up because you just love seeing another day, and you give it all throughout the day because it's something you love and it's something you're curious about. And um, that's what gives a joie de vivre that's almost impossible to replicate. So don't get all tied up about it. Don't get all worried about it. Try something. Start. This morning, I was on with an exec, basically a music exec, um, and we're talking about my son, who's amongst other things, is going to be a record producer and DJ this week, right? It's like great. Like that's what you want to do. Like, the irony is he is a record producer, right? Because of the technology today, you can start putting out stuff left and right.
Yeah.
It's mixing stuff. You don't need to ask the man. You don't need to go to a studio. You don't need all that kind of stuff. You can just start doing it. And if people like it, or you like doing it, keep doing it. Hone your craft, get great at what you do. You will be recognized for it. Find something you love and just stay in the game.
I think that's some good advice because I think a lot of people today are really impatient with developing skills, right? And they try a million things, or they go out and download all this stuff, or they go out and buy all this equipment, and then they just lose interest because they want instant gratification. And I think you exemplify that in your answer, where it's find something that you like, and you know what? You're probably going to suck at it at first, right? You're not going to be good at it. Like if you pick up a guitar, you're not Eddie Van Halen, right? Like it's not going to happen, right? But if you take the time and the effort and you put the slow learning processes and you learn to love and appreciate all the things you might even hate about that thing, then that's when you become, a master of your trade. And I think that's good advice for young people today is that find something that you love, but then also take the time and the effort to master that individual thing, and stop trying to do a million things at once. Because if you try to master a million things at once, you're never going to be good at one thing, right? And you be good at a few things, but just take it slow and have a little delayed gratification in those things. Take some time. You don't need to be the next YouTube influencer or TikTok influencer or whatever, and instantaneous success overnight. That's not realistic. But I think if people take the time, especially now in this rapidly changing economic and political environment that we're experiencing today, and find something they really care about. And a lot of people also think that, like, oh, I just need to go into business, or I need to do some kind of internet company. They're like, I work in the trades currently. Like, I'm a blue collar worker. That's my background. I work in oil and gas, right? And there's not a lot of younger people stepping up to turn wrenches and put on a hard hat anymore. But you want to know what? I like it because it's like man work and it's
Right.
fun. And I got to
And
travel
it's
all
needed. It's needed. It's
right.
like, AI is not going to take over that portion of the business.
No, like I've gotten to travel all around the country, doing really cool stuff. Like if you watch that show with Billy Bob Thornton in it, that show gives me like PTSD because I sat there and went, yeah, I've seen that. I've seen guys get blown up and crushed by a pipe before. You know what I mean? And it's a horrible experience to see that. But I'm like, but I did that. And I have stories to tell. Like people always make fun of me. It's like, dude, you always have something stories to tell. I'm like, yeah, because I don't know. I've done lots of fun and exciting things, and it's just like I can't imagine sitting in front of a computer wearing a suit and tie all the time, like just talking about my spreadsheets and my TPS reports, like, and but even when I went over to the Middle East, right, it was interesting because a lot of the local leaders, they look because oh, this is a military guy, but they look you up and they're like, oh, he's an oil and gas guy, right? So like I was advising some of the local leaders on like oil and gas development and some of the things in the Middle East because I actually knew what I was talking about because that's what I work in versus some like random army infantry officer, right? Where, you know what I mean? So go out and do something that makes you uncomfortable. I think that I would agree with that. And I still can't believe you went over to the Middle East in the time period that you did. I find that very interesting because that was a pretty contentious time frame right after 9/11, especially with all the stuff that was going on. Like, I don't know how you guys pulled that off. I had that discussion with Wells. I'm like, wait a minute, you went over there like right after 9/11. Like, you guys are insane.
Well, yes, I think we are both insane. That's accurate. But we're both curious. We both felt it was important that we go and see it with our own eyes and ears and get our feet in the sand. Um,
Totally.
but I what I find to be more interesting was because we had the balls to show up, the people that we met were so pleased and honored that they got an opportunity to explain directly to Americans that it wasn't all Saudis in that
Hmm.
plane. It was a few of them in that plane. And all of us are not like that. Only a few of us are like that. And there's a man that is in the book. And the book, by the way, is based 99% on real events, based on a true story, Wells and Miles. His name was Osama, and every time he introduced himself, he said, "My name is Osama. Please don't be afraid." He was a funny guy, but he felt compelled to always say that to Americans, right? And it
Yeah.
basically, what it meant to me was, many of them felt terrible about 9/11. And if you compare that to a story Wells tells of mentioning to his neighbors that he was heading on this trip with me, and one of the neighbors' response was, "Well, go get him."
Oh my
Right?
God.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, but that kind of sums it up, right? It's like, go get him. And unfortunately, um, too many Americans kind of just are at that base level or were at that base level. I think yesterday and this week's trade mission, are we calling it,
Hmm.
presidential visit, etc., um, brings them and us to a new level of understanding.
I would agree with that. I think, like you said, it's like Americans though. We have bad people here too. You know what I mean? Like we have plenty of terrorists in America. Why do you think the FBI exists, right? Like Timothy McVeigh, like all these guys that have done horrible things here too. And a lot of people in a lot of countries consider some of the things that we've done overseas as terrorism as well, right? So it's just a perspective that we've been shown a narrative that we just believe everything the news and the government tells us to. And I think that I had very similar experiences as well. It's actually when you sit down and you drink the tea with these people, so to speak, literally, right? And you actually understand their cultures. We're all just human, man. We're all just trying to survive in our different spheres of the world. And, if you handshakes will get you a lot further than trigger pulls. You know what I mean? And I think that people just need to get out of their comfort zone and go experience these cultures. Now, obviously, like don't put yourself in an area of known ISIS concentration. Like that's not going to go well for you. Use common sense, right? But I mean, if you actually just start traveling and interacting and talking to people, and like you said before, listening. Americans need to shut up and listen more. They really do. We don't know everything. We don't know anything about everything outside of our little sphere of influence. And if we can actually just start to listen to other people more, that's how we can build these relationships. And I think that's why you've been such a successful businessman and entrepreneur throughout your life, is that you had the courage to actually listen more and understand people more and build those relationships. And that led you to doing great and amazing things.
Plus, on to all that, yeah, listening is a hugely underrated trait.
No, absolutely. And I know you don't have a lot of time this morning, and I really want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And we definitely need to do like a part two, and also like we need to talk offline about coming down and hanging out, or I'll fly out there, or vice versa. I think we need to connect and go travel the world and go do some cool things together, Miles. Because you and Wells, I'm just like I just want to be like you. Like I'm young and 37. I'm like, Miles, I know you're not my dad, but hey, Dad, can I come along? I want to go do this stuff. I want to go jump out of planes. I want to go climb some mountains. I want to go, make some business deals, and I want to go, make a difference in the world. Because, like I said, we only have a very short period of time that God gives us on this planet, and if we waste it complaining on the internet, then we're not doing what we're supposed to do, right?
Amen, brother. Amen. And yes, I will jump out of a perfectly good airplane with you any day.
Perfectly. Well, Miles, you have all my contact information. Please stay in touch, and I will definitely touch base with you when I get back from Normandy and give you a heads up on how I'm going to strap you to that C-47 and kick you out the door. It's going to be great. I can't wait. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Miles. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, and thanks for coming on the Tuxes Tomahawks podcast today.
My pleasure, Adam.
I'll talk to you later.
Peace.
I didn't mess up your